So Israel plays a really important role. I'm not going to get into, I promise you, a whole long thing. But one of the things I want to do in my book was to sensitize us to the technologies that exist. So let me just take just a minute and just mention a couple things. I mean, first of all, Israel has between 200 and 300 nuclear warheads. Israel's the third. I mean, we'll never catch up with the United States. You guys have like 10,000. Israel's number 3 or 4, tied with France at 200 or 300 nuclear warheads that are deliverable in all kinds of ways, by ship, by artillery, by planes, by missiles. So look at this. I imagine you're in Europe now. I just did a tour of Europe. So I'm in London. So I'm saying to them, look, Israel has a Jericho 3 intercontinental ballistic missile, an Israeli-made missile that carries Israeli-made nuclear warheads. And London is within the range of Israeli nuclear missiles. So everybody's concerned about Iran that has no nuclear missiles. I mean, nobody's concerned sitting in London that Netanyahu has 200 or 300 nuclear missiles that he can throw. And this isn't just hypothetical. Seymour Hersh wrote a book called The Samson Complex, or The Samson Option, and in which he describes the Israeli policy, its nuclear policy, is it's like the ultimate blackmail. Israel says, if we go down, we're not going down alone. We're going to take other countries with us. It's kind of and that certainly might be also one reason why countries don't push Israel so much. Israel says if we're threatened existentially, we'll shoot off our nuclear weapons and we can go in. We can hit Kenya, or we can hit London, or we can hit India or Morocco. So, okay, according to Moshe Ya'alon, who's currently the Israeli Ministry of Defense, we talk about a two-state solution, right? So the two-state solution is that the West Bank becomes a Palestinian state. Well, the West Bank includes the Jordan Valley, right, on the border with Jordan. Ya'alon and the Israeli defense establishment say the Jordan Valley is Israel's security border. Giving up the Jordan Valley is an existential threat to Israel. So if the international community forces a two-state solution on Israel, Israel could really say, we view this as an existential threat, our existence is in jeopardy, and that could be the trigger. That that Israel, these aren't crazy things, because the chain of events is something that can be laid out. I won't get into all the tanks that Israel produces. It does produce a jet airplane. It produces that it exports all over the world, including the Gabriel missile, which is also nuclear capable. And look, when it's sold, like other Israeli weapons, combat proven ship killer. Well, who are they combat proving them on, do you think, if not the Palestinians in particular? So again, the Palestinians become this marketing edge that Israel has. Israel's taking delivery of 9 nuclear-capable submarines from Germany. Why does Israel need 9 nuclear submarines? To attack Tulkarm? Obviously there's an agenda here, a huge military agenda that we don't know about. And I'll tell you one thing that we should, that changes the way you look at things. One of Israel's nuclear submarines that it got from Germany was patrolling the Persian Gulf. It went through the Suez Canal, because Israel has great relations with Egypt, And this nuclear capable, not nuclear submarine, but it's a submarine capable of shooting nuclear missiles, was patrolling the Persian Gulf just below Iran. Well, you put that in the equation, it begins to explain a little bit why Iran is thinking about going nuclear. It's got Russia on one side, it's got Pakistan and India over here, and it's got Israel, not only Israel, that it's in its nuclear range, but an Israeli submarine patrolling right off its southern coast. I mean, that has to have some effect. I mean, if they were responsible people even, you would think that they'd go run for a nuclear option. So all of these things are hidden from us. We don't know, but they play key roles in things. I won't get into all this stuff. Cyber warfare, which is considered the new fifth front of warfare. Israel and the United States are the two major powers in cyber warfare that has tremendous destructive. I mean, you can destroy complete societies with cyber warfare. But the main, what I stress in my book is what I call weapons of repression. These are weapons that are used against people like us. So just as an example, I'll just give you a couple examples and then I'll stop. I'm kind of within the 45 minutes. Israel is only 7 countries in the world, Israel's one of them, capable of launching satellites into space. Israel has several series of spy, surveillance, communication satellites. One of the problems with this military stuff is what's called dual use. And a lot of it, it's hard to categorize it as military because you all like your computer. I mean, Intel is a military company, but because they put chips in your computers, they're not seen as military. It's called dual use. Well, these satellites are the same sorts of things. They're spy satellites, but they also have communications functions, and Israel sells space on these satellites. So Israel has the OFIC series. It's just about to launch OFIC 10. And just to make it personal a little bit, your Facebook just paid $100 million to the Israel aeronautics industry, one of Israel's military industries that launches OFIC, for access to OFIC 10. Because the OFIC 10 satellite will give Facebook access to Africa that it doesn't have access to today. So here's a direct link between your lives and the Israeli military and spying. It all comes together. I'm not going to get into all of this, which is really scary. Nanotechnology, nano-weaponry. A nano is the size of a molecule. So imagine a molecule-sized weapon that can be weaponized. You can endow it with poisons, it's like a biological weapon as well. And it can also be endowed with artificial intelligence. So you could have a molecular-sized weapon, smarter than we are, with the ability to kill. In the trillions, because nanobots, as they're called, or swarm bots, or nano warriors, there's all kinds of names for these things, are made of carbon. So they're able, one nanobot, one of these particles, is able to reproduce 1 trillion times within about a 3-hour period. So, I mean, we're talking, it really sounds like beyond science fiction for most of us. But these are really cutting-edge weapons that exist. And of course, they can be used as nanovirus weapons to induce diseases, or to change the DNA of an entire population, or you can hit the nervous system of an entire population with invisible, the nano's invisible. You can come and spray what's called smart dust over an area, which are really either sensors or weapons and really affect an entire population without them even knowing that they've been attacked. Drones, of course, Israel, 40% of the world's drones are Israeli. And even the American drones are largely based on Israeli technology. I won't get into this, but it really shows how the conception of war matters in terms of weapons. The drone technology has been available since the 70s. The United States decided it didn't want drones because they're stupid weapons. A drone, what does a drone do? It hovers. It loiters. It just stays in one place. So it's easy to shoot down. So the Pentagon said, why do we need a plane that you can shoot down? It's a stupid weapon, we don't want it. That's conventional war thinking. Israel was fighting another kind of a war. Israel's fighting war against the people, against Palestinians, against Hezbollah, against the Egyptians even, during the war of attrition, that didn't have the capability. They didn't have air forces. They couldn't shoot the drones down. And they're tremendously useful weapons against the people, because what does a drone do? It does exactly what humans can't do. It hangs in an area for weeks and months, just tracking where people are going and who's going, and taking a certain time, opportunity to kill somebody because they can be weaponized, surveillance. You know, the people in Gaza go crazy, literally, over this constant buzzing of drones that they don't see. So that they're perfect weapons for wars against the people. And then the United States, when it all of a sudden found itself in a war against the people, decided it needed drones. Israel had already captured the drone industry pretty much, and the United States is in catch-up. But it's a very good example of how the concept of war determines what weapons you develop. I won't get into tanks, bulldozers like the Caterpillar D9 bulldozer. That's designed explicitly. It's a two-story machine, Caterpillar, that's designed explicitly, the shovel, to destroy Palestinian buildings. It's designed in a way that when it hits a building, the building falls away from the driver, as opposed to a normal bulldozer that if it hits something, it would collapse on the driver. So it's specifically made for demolishing Palestinian homes. That's a weapon of repression. And drones aren't just big things. The Technion, and this should be a BDS target, because the Technion has a very close relationship to Berkeley. The Technion is Israel's largest polytechnic university, but it's also the largest Israeli army laboratory. So, you know, with all due respects to SodaStream, this should be the target here in the Bay Area. The Technion's relation to Berkeley in all kinds of ways. So, for example, in the Technion, they develop micro drones that can kill people, but they mimic insects. See, it mimics a butterfly. Drones can be used for surveillance or for killing. So how's this for a drone? You know, a mosquito drone, I mean, it's the size of a mosquito. You can see a poison kind of an application, plus cameras. You see, so they can be used for surveillance. And weaponizing insects themselves. You take insects and turn them into weapons. So who's going to notice, you know, if you got a fly up here that happens to have, instead of a head, it happens to have a camera, or these kinds of weapons. So military technology is getting to a point where it's really getting out of control. And finally, I won't get into all of this, but policing. The last point I want to make is that what I was trying to say before is that it's the unsexy part of war that's really the most important, that affects us. The policing. They police once in a while in Ferguson, you know, if it happens to the black community, or maybe Occupy Wall Street where they're a little bit tough With middle-class kids, it becomes an issue. But basically, police isn't much of an issue. Not like you have an anti-war movement, you don't have an anti-police movement, really. And so the police become a part of your everyday, because people buy into the security. Of course I want security. We forget that security is not a neutral term, but security is a policy that supports the ruling classes. And here again, I mean, I know my language sounds old-fashioned, but it's really the 1%. Who decides what security is? Who decides who the enemy is? Who decides what weapons? You know, security isn't some technical neutral term, but it contains a whole political agenda. And it's the police that really carry out the security, not the military. So it's the police that have much more of a repressive influence on our lives than the military, but they tend to be invisible. So you've got all kinds of weapons that really aren't issues. Crowd control, all kinds of chemical agents. And look at this. I mean, nothing can be more boring than this. A crowd control vehicle on a Chevy chassis. I mean, put that next to an F-35. And what's more, you're not going to make a movie about Rambo driving around in a Chevy chassis with this. But this is like small arms that are unsexy. This is really the way the repression works every day, not through the military. So we're looking at the wrong stuff when we're looking at repression in a capitalist system. Anyway, all kinds of automized guns, certainly surveillance systems. Israel's got 600 checkpoints. No wonder it runs LAX and other airports in the world. And no wonder it's putting in surveillance systems in your cities. I mean, you've got millions of people that are guinea pigs in the West Bank. And what's interesting, I took this off the site of one of these companies. The greatest threat to security states, like the United States is becoming, the greatest threat is what's called spaces of anonymity. You know, it's like Orwell. I mean, if the state doesn't know where you are and who you're talking to and what's being said, it gets very nervous. So these systems become totalizing systems that control, that remove spaces of anonymity. Of course, we've got walls, the wall in the West Bank, and that gets translated into walls, perimeter security that Israel exports all over the world. In Nigeria, for example, in the gas rigs off the coast of Nigeria, all kinds of very high-tech sorts of security that also get into gated communities. So Israel and Israeli guards are very involved in gated communities. If you read accounts of Hurricane Katrina, you'll realize that the Homeland Security, what was it called, FEMA, hired Israeli security people to come in, and some of the killing that was done, but the protection of certain communities was handed over to Israeli security people. And that's become very much a part of the American security industry. And these are, again, technologies brought in directly from the occupation into your communities. And Israel's very upfront about it. I mean, this is a huge, there's 250 companies in Israel that export security equipment, training, and so on, including executive protection for corporate executives. That's a big kind of a thing. I won't get into all of that. And all right, and finally, I'll just say, really finally, this whole issue of, all right, how do you sell this? That's also a piece of it. How do you get people to buy into security? We want policing, we want gated communities, we want these technologies, as if security is good for us. You know, when I came here a few days ago, I was in Ben Gurion Airport coming through, and In Israel, you use ethnic profiling. So Israel doesn't rely on machines, and it's trying to get the American airports to do that. You don't rely on machines, you rely on interaction. So if you've been to Israel, if you go out of the airport, they ask you dumb questions, what are the name of your kids? And it's dumb questions, but because they can tell whether it's better than a machine. They can tell whether you're nervous, and then they can get into other questions. So actually the security seems less intrusive because you don't go through all the TSA stuff. You do go through a certain security, and I'm behind an American tourist couple, and they were literally yelling at the Israeli security people at the machines because they didn't have to take off their shoes. In Israel, you don't take off your shoes. In many cases, you don't take your computer out of the bag. Well, you think in the 21st century, you don't have a machine that can see through a computer bag? All this stuff is just psychological games. And these people were actually yelling at the Israeli security, I want to take off my shoes. How do you know, how am I going to be safe if they had bought into it to a degree that they became more security than the Israeli security. So that's part of the framing of it all, the selling of it all. So look, and Israel's very good at that. So here, after Operation Cast Lead in 2008 and 2009 in Gaza, that everybody was upset about, the Chinese sent their army spokesman of the People's Liberation Army to Israel to learn how they sold Operation Cast Lead. Because the Chinese can sell Tibet the way Israel sells what it does to the Tibetans become the terrorists. Whoa, we're home free, Brad Pitt or no Brad Pitt. So that's part of it. Or here's an Israeli soldier, a drone operator. Operates drones during the day and lights Hanukkah candles at night. And even the use, of course, of women soldiers. The whole sex appeal thing of women soldiers in khaki bikinis with M16s on their back and so on. So that all of this is a part of the game, and that's why my book, I think, it's less intended to throw light on the Israel-Palestine conflict. I think it does to some degree, but more to say that Israel is globalizing Palestine. And this has really become a global issue, and it gets us into issues of global security and capitalism and who wants to secure us and how they're doing it and what things that we really don't know. I didn't know very much about. I still don't. I just know the tip of the iceberg. So I'll leave it at that.